The FIA intends to allow prospective new Formula One teams to register their interest in entering the competition, providing the clearest signal yet that F1's grid could expand beyond 10 teams. FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem tweeted that he's asked his team to look at launching an expressions of interest process for prospective new teams to join F1. It is a significant step forward for potential new F1 entrants, particularly Andretti Global, which has been the most vocal about its desire to join the grid over the past year. Following the failure of its efforts to purchase the Sauber-run Alfa Romeo participation, American racing juggernaut Andretti confirmed their ambition to enter F1 in 2024. When Andretti announced their plan in February of last year, the FIA stated that it was not currently in a position to consider potential new F1 participants. This was particularly driven by F1 stakeholders' concerns that bringing in new teams would jeopardize the stable franchise model that had been built up in recent years. These concerns stem from a provision in the most recent Concord Agreement agreed by all 10 existing teams in 2020 that establishing a $200 million anti-dilution fund that would be paid by any new entrant and shared equally among current competitors. Waiving the anti-dilution fund for any new entrant would require majority approval from all 10 existing teams. However, Ben Sulayem's recent speech, which made no particular reference to Andretti or any other rumored new manufacturer who might join Audi in committing to F1, looks to signal a shift in the FIA's approach. Next to that, F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali hinted at the FIA and F1's openness to welcome additional teams at the conclusion of last year, saying a high-quality proposal that would add value to F1 would be welcome. F1 stakeholders continue to seek new manufacturers, and additional investment for existing teams is always welcome, especially now that all 10 teams have the potential to be profitable. The specifics of the process Ben Sulayem is referring to are unknown, but it would be the first major new admission process in less than a decade. 15 candidates fought to join the 2010 grid, and 3 of them were successful, only to disappear over the next 7 seasons. But a subsequent request for expression of interest in late 2013 resulted in the arrival of Haas, which is now in its 8th season of F1 competition. So following FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem's hint about finding a new entry, the likelihood of another Formula One team joining the grid in the near future is more plausible. The FIA, F1's governing body, will consider beginning a process to solicit expressions of interest from possible new F1 teams. While there's no certainty that an 11th team or more would join the grid, it is a significant improvement from this time last year, when the FIA stated that it was not in a position to examine potential new entrants. Even as recently as November 2022, F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali stated that they were not in the best position to discuss a serious new entry. However, Ben Sulayem's quick post on Twitter on Monday this week indicates that the attitude is shifting, at least in terms of formally collating and reviewing the interested bids. Although the specifics of the process Ben Sulayem is referring to are unknown, we have a clear sense of what prospective new teams will need to do in order to compete for a spot on the grid. The last time this happened was in December 2013, when F1 and the FIA were looking for a single new team, which resulted in the birth of Haas's F1 spot. It's worth noting that the FIA has always stipulated that if no applicant is deemed fit by both the FIA and the commercial rights holder, no further team will be picked. While the FIA has led the charge for a formal procedure to begin through Ben Sulayem, F1 and the teams will still have a significant role in examining the expressions of interest and selecting which ones are worth considering. This procedure will only begin after the FIA officially releases a call for expressions of interest, which normally makes many information public, including as the particular starting point for the new entry to enter the championship, which is usually at least a full year away at the earliest. A formal expression of interest is a thorough process that necessitates that the potential team be quite advanced. It must be able to demonstrate that a company has been incorporated, as well as the identification of all shareholders and information on necessary experience and capabilities, such as technical experience, racing experience, facilities, equipment, and engineering resources. It's part sales presentation, part glorified job interview. In fact, a cover letter explaining the candidacy, as well as a CV for each director and officer of the company are usually required. There will almost certainly be an initial administration charge of a few $1,000s to pay, and any team that pays this and registers their interest by the deadline will be given the exact parameters of the selection process. Those who submit full applications will be charged a substantially higher fee, which was $130,000 the previous time this happened. It demonstrates how seriously the FIA takes the process, effectively weeding out the least serious entries from the start. Following that, a complete due diligence examination will be conducted, with the selection criteria comprising the team's technical ability and resources, the capacity to generate and maintain adequate funds to participate at a competitive level, the team's experience, and human resources. The FIA and F1 are essentially seeking for guarantees of long-term stability, as well as the value that the candidate may offer to the championship, with a particular emphasis this time on avoiding the dilution that has been discussed so much in recent years. Though this is time-consuming, it is usually remedied swiftly. The previous time this process was performed, a final decision was made within 3 weeks after the deadline for full applications. In fact, the time span between the official call for expressions of interest and the final decision was less than 3 months. So if Ben Sulayem's tweet becomes a formal FIA declaration, we should expect a relatively speedy closure to the entire process, even if no new team is selected in the end. But what teams are up for joining the grid? And which is most likely to join? Well, we're going to note out the big 4 contenders. F1 Andretti Global. There was undoubtedly a joyful dance in Fishers, Indiana. Michael Andretti has been attempting to launch his own Formula 1 team for quite some time, but he's met with opposition from the existing teams each time. Andretti, already participating in IndyCar and Formula E among other things, continued hearing from certain team bosses that 10 teams on the grid is enough. Wolf & Company actually means something else. They do not want to share the enormous prize pool, which is becoming increasingly full owing to Formula 1's success, with an 11th or even more teams. With the FIA's announcement, it no longer appears to be a question of if, but of when Andretti will make his F1 debut. Guggenheim Partners, an investment firm, has finally agreed to pay the $200 million entry fee, removing a significant stumbling block. Furthermore, a new facility in Indianapolis will be developed where Andretti would produce its own F1 cars. Preparations are said to be well underway for Andretti to begin racing as soon as 2024. Calvin Low's team. Starting a Formula 1 team costs money, a large sum of money. Fortunately for him, Calvin Low has plenty of it. According to Forbes, the Hong Kong businessman has $1.7 billion in assets. By 2026, he hopes to have his own Formula 1 team at the start of the Grand Prix. It remains to be seen whether Low is the individual the FIA and current teams are looking for. Unlike Andretti, Low is mostly interested in joining for business reasons. The billionaire sees F1 as a worthwhile investment now that the sport is so popular around the world. In his ideal scenario, Low establishes a team, lays a solid platform for winning races, and then sells the team for a large sum of money. This does not appear to be the ideal sales pitch at the FIA. Porsche. For a long time, it appeared that Red Bull Racing and Porsche would form a partnership in 2026. Negotiations broke up because Red Bull did not want to surrender too much authority to the Volkswagen Group-owned brand. Porsche, on the other hand, is not giving up. Talks with other teams are said to be ongoing, and Porsche wants to be an engine supplier. What is the issue? A growing number of teams are factory teams. It is so unlikely that CEO Zak Brown would sell over half of McLaren to Porsche. Only Haas and Williams appear to be viable choices. Those teams are well aware of this, which strengthens their negotiating stance. Meanwhile, Porsche is eager to enter Formula 1, establishing its own team, which has existed in the past, would thus be the appropriate solution. Honda. What is true for Porsche is also true for Honda to some extent. The Japanese appear to regret leaving the sport after Max Verstappen won the World Championship with a Honda engine in 2021. Red Bull won the Constructors' Championship in 2022, in addition to another title for Verstappen. The cars were powered by a Honda engine, however, it was dubbed Red Bull Powertrains. Honda has already agreed to supply engines in 2026, but for which team should that be? Will there be another collaboration with Red Bull? In that situation, Honda's role will be more limited than in the past, as Red Bull would produce the engines entirely in-house. Joining a small team like Williams does not, without a doubt, meet Honda's level of ambition. As a result, forming its own team would be the ideal solution. Which of these teams would you like to see on the grid in the future? And will they eventually join? Could you see F1 handling races of 26 cars? Let us know in the comments down below. As always, thanks for watching.